Hey everyone, it's Kong, and here's the second issue of the Langrisser Lookout. If you remember from last time, this is a new bi-weekly series where I present a mix of a community news roundup and a status update or progress report on my own account. Since I'm still not super deep in the endgame, my hope is that the stuff I'm gradually working on might help direct or encourage other newer players scrambling up the ranks. At worst, it'll be another way to get your background Langrisser fix at work on a Monday morning. Anyway, let's start with the important stuff, so here's the news. On the PvE front, the Fireworks Festival is ending this week, with some additional time on the tail end to exchange for your rewards. So don't forget to finish up if you haven't already. Get in there and finish off those challenges. We also had a new dump of information about upcoming content from China. First of all, there's news about 3 new characters from the Langrisser Reincarnation Tensei 3DS game. So these are Rozalia, Noemi, and Werner. Not the Sigma Werner, but the one from this spin-off game. There's more information about the girls on Wikigrisser, and I'll leave links to their character pages in the description below. We don't have much more information about Werner yet. We also learned about 2 new unique pieces of SSR equipment for Betty and Sophia. Betty's boosts fixed damage up to 30% based on her health, and Sophia's looks like it grants a mini faction buff whenever she uses skills on her allies, which synergizes really well with her talent, and this is going to bring her right back up into the running for Apex healers. We also have information about 3 new Awakening or 3-cost skills for Ultimuller, the Toguro brothers, and Almeida. Ultimuller's skill does 1.5 times damage, and if there are 2 or more enemies within 1 ring around him, then you get a chance to attack again, but not move again. So since you can't move again, this gives you a second crack at a tank that you didn't kill, or it can help you attack another enemy if you've nestled Ultimuller into a little batch of opponents. And this skill also reduces the cooldown if you kill the enemy. The new skill for the Toguro brothers increases their damage up to 60% based on how far you moved before attacking, so nothing really new there. It also pushes the enemy 2 blocks, and if there's something in the way of them being pushed, like terrain or another unit, then it stuns them. This also leaves you with a little pre-battle healing buff, so the next time you get into combat you'll heal up a little bit. And finally, Almeida gets kind of a silly skill. It heals within a pretty good span, and then it grants all of those affected allies essentially the Quip talent of a 4-star Almeida. So the ability to give 1 debuff to 2 enemies within 4 spaces after acting. This could pile up the debuffs pretty quickly with your whole team doing it, but the ultimate effectiveness of this skill will depend on the debuff pool, like the quality of the debuffs, as well as how they stack. We also got to see some new skins, including this really cool Egyptian-themed skin for Bozel, which is high on my list because he comes with a little canine companion. Has102938 on Reddit has actually compiled over there a pretty nice schedule of all the upcoming skins and how to get them, so I'll leave a link to that in the description as well, if you want to click on all the little pictures and see what they look like. Now, on the PvP front, last time we talked about the Summit der Langrisser, and the round robins were going on at that time. Now, 2 weeks later, the double elimination finals are almost at an end, with tournament organizers Dango and Straw still in the mix. You can take a look at the evolving brackets and results at the link in the description. This tournament will be finishing up within the next couple days, because they want to get everything finished before the Apex playoffs start. But stay tuned for news about future community-run tournaments, because this one was fairly successful, and I think they're going to want to start running more of them after this Apex playoffs finishes. So on that note, next weekend is the final weekend to make a push for Apex Arena before the seeding for the playoffs is locked in. I hope you all have great luck in your run for Langrisser rank, and hopefully try to crack into that top 256. A final little fun piece of PvP news, just because I included something silly like this last time. There's a new Chinese Season 4 Playoffs box usage chart going around. This one shows the units that most frequently appeared in Season 4 Apex Arena Playoffs, so the top 256 players, and they've narrowed it down to basically the top 15 units. So if you were to make an Apex box of the most common playoff units, these are the units that you would see. So we have Jugler, Liana, Zerida, Landius, Iris, Yusuke, Deedlit, who's coming soon to Global, Listel, Ares, also coming soon to Global, Wheeler, Bozel, Luna, Knight of Mystery, Tiaris, and Hiei. It's interesting not to see Claret on that list, but other than that, fairly usual suspects. Now, obviously, it's important to note that this is not a tier list, so this isn't a ranking of which characters are better for Apex Arena. It's also important to note that this is a snapshot in time. So these data were taken from the beginning of the playoffs in a certain context, and obviously new characters have been introduced in China since then. So you don't see characters like Reen or Arianrod who could make their way into the Chinese Apex meta in a future season. And obviously in Global, we're a season behind. So it's just interesting to kind of keep an eye on how these things develop. And that's the news for this week. So now it's time to jump over to the Kong progress update. Before jumping into my account, I do want to just pause and thank you all so much for your support over the last few weeks. Shortly after the last issue of the Langrisser Lookout, I reached 500 subscribers on YouTube, which is a really nice milestone, and I'm already thinking ahead to some good possible milestone celebration options for 1,000 subscribers. Whatever it is, I'm sure it'll probably involve some gambling and summoning. Maybe I'll try to pull an SSR off every banner that's available when we hit 1,000. Might be shooting myself in the foot on that one, depending on what banners are there, but it could be a fun little challenge. So I guess the first thing for me to talk about is the results of my summoning sessions in the last 2 weeks. On the Lambda, Gizarov, and Sigma banner, I didn't do a summoning video for this one because I wasn't really hyped about any of the units. I did want to try to pull one quick SSR. I didn't have any of the 3 of them. So I figured getting one SSR out of the way would be helpful for me on future Destiny banners. And worst case scenario, if I got like 40 or 50 summons in, I could just carry that pity over to what I thought was going to be the Leonhardt and Ren banner at the time. Either way, I ended up getting Lambda in only 20 summons, which I'm sure did nothing to dispel any notions that people have about me having good summoning luck. Then, just last week, we were surprised with the Lana, Rachel, and Tiaris banner. I also managed to snag Tiaris in only 20 summons, or actually, it was technically 21 summons, since I accidentally did a single pull when I was trying to do my daily friendship summon. Anyway, super pumped about this. I've been trying to get Tiaris for a long time, and finally, she's in the box, and I don't have to worry about her haunting my account anymore. So let's move over to the section of the Langrisser Lookout that I'm going to call the Grind. This is where every 2 weeks I'm going to talk about the 5 Gs. That's my goals, my gear, my gates, my grunts, and my group. So my goals are basically, what am I working towards right now? So I haven't finished PvE, and that dictates a lot of how I'm choosing what characters to build and what equipment to focus on and that kind of thing. The main PvE things I have left are cracking the level 70 Eternal Temples and getting S ranks in Ancient Beckoning, particularly against Hugin and Munin, so I can consider changing Matthew's class. I started with him as an archer, and I actually really kind of like Archer Matthew. But it would be kind of nice to know I don't really need him in that class anymore, so I could kind of play around with him in possibly one of his other classes. So let's move on to the next G, which is my gear. One of the nice side effects of doing these reviews every 2 weeks instead of every week is that it looks like I've gotten tons of new stuff just because it piles up. I didn't get anything too special from the event. I got my second Soul Stealer headdress, maybe for future Almeida once I decide to build her up. My Timeless Trials rewards were my second Goddess tier, which it's nice to have for Tiaris or for, a healer in general. Not a bad thing to have an extra Goddess tier. And I also got my first ever Swordsmith medal, which I just have kind of sitting in my in-development Listel right now. But very glad to have one of those. Very versatile piece of equipment, and I can eventually decide to give that to someone else, whoever needs it most at the time. My first week's gambles, I ended up getting the instant healer pack, basically. I got a Goddess Left Hand, I got the Tenyo's Robe, and I got the Yggdrasil Wreath, all from my gambles. So it was kind of funny to get a instant healer in a box, and then pull Tiaris. My second week's gambles were not quite as impressive, although I did get my first Queen's Scepter, which I used to upgrade my Yulia. She was still using a Crystal Hammer, so this is a big upgrade for her, and she's one of my few characters that I have fully invested right now, so that was nice. For random miscellaneous junk, from dragon sweeps, joint battles, map events, and so on, I did get a third Yggdrasil Wreath, and I also got a second Bloodline Magic Armor. So I have my first one on Leaden currently, and I'm not really sure who to give my second one to yet, but it's something that's nice to have just in the event that I start working on another tank. I'll have something to give to them. I also got my first Miracle Staff for Bozel, which I don't have built up yet, and I don't have that Soul Stealer headdress built up yet for him either. But those are things that I can work on. He does the job right now as it is, in terms of splashing out big nets of debuffs, but it never hurts to make Bozel a little bit more dangerous. So next let's talk about my gates. I put together this new Gate of Fate farming calendar, just in a Google sheet, because I love spreadsheets for that kind of thing. And this is not really meant to remind me of who I'm supposed to be farming, but it's more for long-term planning, so I can see like when a character is going to be finished at a certain star level, and it lets me kind of figure out when I'm going to be able to start subbing new characters in, so I find it kind of helpful. I got Listel up to 4 stars, and I was going to drop Listel for Hiei, but I went with Omega instead now that I have Lambda to unlock his skill bond. But that said, I immediately dropped Omega for Tiaris, and I've been giving her 4 sweeps per day since she's one of those OG 4 gate characters. So I've got her up to 32 out of 50 already, having just gotten her a couple days ago. And I'm also giving a couple gates per day to Yusuke, so if I give him 2 a day, he should be 4 stars later on this week, and then I can bring Omega back, at least until I hopefully get Deedlit next week. So let's talk about the next G, which is Grunts, which is my training. I didn't really want to farm the training grounds too much because I also had the fireworks event to clear, so I just focused on getting all my troops core training, core techs, up to 14, 14, 14. So I'm over the hump now where I now need SSR mats for all my core training. So I know I should be more judicious about what I spend them on, and I'm not really sure if I'm going to keep this even pace of, you know, getting them up to 15, 15, 15 across the board, or if I'll start focusing more on my cavalry, because I have Leon and Landius and Yulia and in the future Deedlit, who all use good cavalry troops. So that's probably the smartest idea, is to focus all on one troop type for now, at least to get the attack up. And the next G we're going to look at is my group hugs, so my bonds. I finally maxed all Leanna's bonds. I've had her since day 1. She was actually my first and second SSR character. But I never really bothered to max her attack bond, which is kind of a weird thing since that's the one that's important for her healing. But I finally got around and did that in the last couple of weeks, so she's quite a machine now. I also fully maxed Narm from scratch. She was all 1s across the board, I think. And part of the reason I did that is because I think she can be a useful character for me to slot into my team for multiple things that I still need help with. So Scylla, a couple Ancient Beckoning fights, making Timeless Trials triple S level a little bit easier, especially with quadruple S coming this week. And where I actually do have a fairly strong, like, Protag Legion of Glory team going, so I think she'll be able to drop right into my teams. And finally, maybe hilariously, I also fully maxed my Tiaris bonds, just because she's new and shiny, and I've been hyped about getting her for so long, it would have felt weird to, you know, put her into my lineup and not actually invest some in her. So even though she's only 3 stars, I was able to give her some old equipment I had for Leanna. Not the stuff I showed earlier, that was on Leanna earlier for Apex, but I've been running that on Tiaris with her full bonds, and she's actually doing fairly well. I know she gets so much better when you star her up because of her talent, but I'm still impressed with how well she's doing at 3 stars. And the final thing to talk about is my PvP progress. So I started this cycle in Silver 3 with 1,324 points. And currently, I've made it to Silver 2, I have 1,400 points. At the time of this recording, there's still another Apex window open on Sunday night, so I'll be playing in that. And then, like I said earlier, we have one more weekend left. I have no illusions about getting anywhere close to contention. I am even seriously doubting that I'll come close to gold, and to be honest, I'm not really trying that hard for it. But that said, that doesn't mean that I am not going in and trying my best in these Apex matches, even though I know I don't really have much room to advance. I just find the mode fun, and it's fun to get in there and gain experience. So I think that's the biggest thing with PvP, especially for someone who's just at the start of transitioning from a PvE heavy box like mine, is learning what the new strengths of my characters are, because I know how my characters work really well in PvE. But then there's a whole different facet of these characters and how they interact and work together in PvP. So that's something that I think is important to learn. And that's why I'm playing a decent amount of Apex these last couple weeks. I know I've only done 30 battles, but that's a lot for someone who's not really going anywhere. Let's be honest. And I also don't believe that it's going to set me up super well for next season either. But experience is experience, and it is going to help me get a little bit better as a player. So that's it for the Kong update, and that's going to be it for this issue of the Langrisser Lookout. Yeah, so thanks so much for watching. I hope this video was interesting to you in some way. If you have any comments or feedback, feel free to drop a comment below as always. You don't really need to subscribe to get notified when new issues of the Langrisser Lookout are coming out, because it's every 2 weeks. Just make a note on your little Doberman puppy wall calendar and then you'll know. So that means stay tuned for Should You Summon later this week, and then I'll catch you in the next issue of the Langrisser Lookout.